With Ukraine steeling itself for a Russian onslaught in the Donbas region and President Zelensky warning of tens of thousands of deaths during the current siege of Mariupol, is there now a sense that the war is turning ever more attritional and bloody? And Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer's talks with Vladimir Putin seem to have been fruitless, with the Kremlin calling for a final agreement before any pause in the fighting. I'm joined by independent journalist in Ukraine, Olga Tokariuk, and then we'll be talking to senior lecturer in security at the University of Bath and former NATO analyst Dr. Patrick Bury. But Olga, first of all, good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
It's more and more depressing, and the emotion expressed by President Zelensky about Mariupol is very telling.
Yes, well, the figures of casualties in Mariupol vary. We do not have the official definite information, but even those estimates are shocking because it's estimated that between 5,000 and 20,000 civilians might have been killed in Mariupol as a result of Russian bombings. You know, this is a huge number. It's about 5% if we take the figure of 20,000 of city's population, pre-war population. And we also know that tens of thousands of people still remain in Mariupol under Russian bombs. And of course, the reports that chemical weapons might have been used in Mariupol add to this distress, although there is still no official confirmation. And actually, the latest coming out from Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, they are saying that they are checking this information, but they are more inclined to believe that the agent used was not a nerve agent, not a chemical weapon, but phosphorus bombs. So that's the latest information we have.
We heard about the atrocities in Bucha, and there is the fear that those atrocities will be repeated or have been repeated elsewhere, that this is a Russian army that's either very indisciplined or has been given carte blanche by the leaders to do what they wish.
Yes, it seems that they've been deliberately committing these crimes, executing unarmed civilians. Sometimes these people had their hands tied behind their backs, and they have been executed with shots in their heads, dead bodies with such, wounds were found. Also, there are multiple reports of rape of underage girls, of boys as well. So these are not isolated cases. It seems that these crimes have had a systemic character, that they were not only committed in Bucha, but in other parts of Kyiv region, also in Chernihiv region. Torture chambers were found there, where people were held in captivity and tortured and executed. Similar crimes were reported also in Sumy region, in Kharkiv region, in those areas that have been under Russian control for several weeks, but that have been subsequently liberated by Ukrainian forces. And there are fears, of course, that similar crimes could be committed by Russians in the southern Ukraine, in those areas that are currently under Russian occupation, and from where we have very little information because there are no journalists who are allowed to operate there.
The question of the battle now for those areas in eastern Ukraine, an area that the Ukrainian forces have been active in for years, since the annexation of Crimea. What reports are you hearing of the fighting there, and how confident are the Ukrainian forces that they can resist the might of Russia?
Well, on the one hand, Ukrainian forces that have been stationed in Donbas are some of the most experienced and professional units. You know, some of the best Ukrainian soldiers are now in Donbas, and the reinforcements are also coming from other parts of the country, especially now that the northern part has been liberated from Russian occupation. So reinforcements are being sent to eastern parts of Ukraine at this moment. But at the same time, Russia also has an advantage there in eastern Ukraine because its supply lines are much shorter than they used to be in the northern part of the country. You know, Russian border is just over there. We are hearing the reports of massive movement of Russian military vehicles towards the border, and the Ukrainian officials are warning that in the next weeks and potentially days, the big battle of Donbas will begin. Ukraine's foreign minister Kuleba said that we'll likely see something similar to the World War II battles with the heavy use of tanks, artillery, and other heavy weapons.
The trip by the Austrian Chancellor to meet Vladimir Putin, I'm not sure whether any expectations of a positive outcome, but it seems the meeting did not go well.
Yes, indeed, we are not hearing positive news. In fact, the Austrian side said that the conversation was not friendly at all, that it was basically a confrontation, that the facts were discussed, and there was no Russian side didn't show any willingness to compromise or back down. Many in Ukraine are questioning, the at all these visits, like what's the use of them if Russia is clearly demonstrating it is not willing to negotiate, it is not willing to stop its aggression, it is not willing to stop its war crimes in Ukraine. So many in Ukraine are saying, well, the European leaders in the European countries and the Western countries should rather provide Ukraine with more assistance, send more weapons to Ukraine, including tanks, artillery systems, and other heavier weapons that are needed to repel Russian offensive in Donbas and potentially also to liberate territories of southern Ukraine that are under Russian occupation. More sanctions on Russia are needed, such as an oil embargo. But these visits are not seen in Ukraine as those that could, bring peace or put an end to this war.
The theory, obviously, that the Russians are working on is that if they inflict terrible humanitarian injuries on so many people, that eventually the government in Kiev will say, enough is enough, we will go to the table and we will give you something of what you want. But on the other side, Ukrainians, having seen what the Russians have done to them, do not want to make any compromise, I presume.
Yes, well, I think there is readiness on both sides to see what will the outcome of this battle for Donbas be. Ukrainian government is doing everything it can to evacuate civilians from those areas that can become, a battlefield in the next days. Massive effort to evacuate civilian population of Donetsk, Luhansk, but also Kharkiv and Dnipro regions that are bordering with these two regions that have been partly controlled by Russian forces since 2014 is underway. But this effort is also very difficult and is very dangerous. We've seen Russia targeting with a missile railway station in Kramatorsk in Donetsk region that is in Ukraine-controlled territory. Last Friday, more than 15 people, including children, were killed in that attack. So, while Ukraine is trying to evacuate civilians and it's trying to warn them of this imminent offensive, imminent battle in Donbas, it's also, of course, preparing to, resist and to repel this attack using all its strengths, using all the experience its soldiers have gained in the last 8 years, and of course, hoping that it will receive enough military assistance, enough weapons to fight this battle.